Chapter 1. Night had fallen over Paris, cloaking its streets and spires in a silent velvet. The city slept, but above it the full moon shone brightly, bathing windows, bridges, and colonnades in silver light. In this magical stillness stood the Louvre, not merely a museum, but a secret temple of arts and wonders, hiding within its walls the magic of ancient times. Its glass pyramid shimmered softly, as if the moon itself had poured a drop of light into it. At the edge of a high rooftop on a neighboring building, a silhouette crouched, flexible and graceful as a shadow itself. It was she, Mira Paw, the famed cat burglar whose claws were sharper than daggers and whose hearing was keener than an owl's whistle. In her paws gleamed an antique binocular with lenses made from enchanted quartz. She studied the facades carefully, counted the guards' footsteps, and listened to the very breath of the night. Having finished her survey, Mira lowered the binoculars and drew from her belt a strange round device. It was a magical compass, crafted according to ancient alchemical diagrams. Its needle did not point north, but relentlessly pulled toward the target, the shard of insight, an artifact steeped in legend. It was supposed to be somewhere inside. She closed her eyes for a moment, as if tuning herself, then stepped into the void. With a grace known only to her feline kind, Mira leapt downward and, extending her claws, slid gently along the wall. The stone masonry beneath her paws flowed like water, and her fall slowed as if the very architecture willed it so. She knew exactly where a balcony was slightly ajar, and slipped onto it without disturbing a breeze or a shadow. Before her stood a massive arched doorway, adorned with an ornate bronze keyhole. Yet Mira pulled from behind her ear a slender chameleon pin, a magical needle that transformed itself into the shape of the needed key. The lock clicked almost tenderly. Everything happened without a sound, as if even the Louvre itself, ancient and wise, recognized her as a worthy guest. Without looking back, Mira slid inside, into the place where her boldest and most dangerous heist would begin. Chapter 2. Inside the Louvre, a special kind of silence reigned, not the usual hush of a museum, but the sacred stillness that envelops ancient sanctuaries where walls remember the breath of great masters and the whispered half-words of spells. The air was thick, as if infused with invisible dust of time and mystery. Mira stepped onto the parquet floor so softly that even the wood dared not creak. Yet the moment she crossed the threshold of the hall, everything around seemed to awaken. The paintings, silent guardians of art, stirred ever so slightly. Gazes from the canvases, once fixed toward eternity, now slowly and continuously tracked the unwelcome visitor. It was not fear nor anger but a cautious, ancient curiosity, as if the very images themselves sensed the magic flowing from this black shadow with amber eyes. Without slowing her pace, Mira donned narrow glasses that shimmered with a bluish gleam. Instantly, delicate lines appeared before her eyes, thin as spider threads, crisscrossing the hall at impossible angles. Magical beams, unseen barriers that could paralyze or even trap any intruder within a painting. Mira curved her body, ducked low, and slipped between them, dancing like a drop of water among blades. But her movement did not go unnoticed. Suddenly, from the nearest pedestal came a hiss. The statuette of a gargoyle, small and carved from dark onyx, trembled and flexed its tiny claws. Its eyes flared with a crimson light, and its mouth, once frozen in a smirk, opened in a silent scream. It was a warning, a signal to the other museum guardians who slumbered beneath their marble and bronze masks. Mira hesitated not a moment. She pulled a tiny orb from her shoulder pouch, a smoke sphere enchanted in the forests of shadow heather. One swift motion, and a soft cloud of silvery mist ignited, instantly filling the space. When it cleared, the hall was silent and empty once more. The paintings were still. The gargoyle slackened. And Mira had vanished, dissolved into the air like a ghost, continuing her path ever deeper into the heart of the enchanted Louvre. Chapter 3. Mira stepped into the next hall, and it greeted her with a tense silence, heavier and more unsettling than any ordinary alarm. Here, everything was different. In this place, the paintings did not merely hang on the walls, they breathed. Dozens of canvases, their surfaces cloaked in the noble patina of centuries, trembled within their frames like the surface of water disturbed by a thrown stone. The figures upon them moved, slowly, almost imperceptibly, but with that terrifying determination characteristic of dreams in which you realize you have become part of another's will. Mira passed alongside one particularly dark frame depicting a forest shrouded in thick mist. Branches, like claws, stretched out from the depths of the painting, and somewhere between them, it seemed, eyes were watching. She barely blinked when the entire space around her shuddered. The air thickened, and as if the very wall rose behind her. The image pulled at her, sucking her in with a force that neither flight nor leap could escape. In an instant, she found herself standing on a moss-covered path amid the shadowy painted forest. Everything here was made of paint, leaves shimmered with strokes of green, clouds were but blurred flickers of a brush, and the air smelled of oil and varnish. But the danger was real. From behind painted bushes emerged a wolf, not an ordinary one, but a guardian. Its eyes glowed amber, and its maw-bore teeth rendered with frightening precision. It neither growled nor lunged blindly, it knew whom it guarded, and it knew that this shadow had come into its dark domain. Without wasting a second, Mira pulled from her bag a slender brush tipped with gold. This was her pathmaker, an enchanted tool capable of painting an exit through any plane. With the dexterity of a skilled artist, she swept the brush in a half-oval in the air, and the colors parted as if obeying the very command of reality. The canvas tore like fabric, revealing a passage back into the hall where only moments before mere paintings adorned the walls. Without looking back, Mira stepped through the rift, and the world of paint, and the wolf guarding it, were left behind, sealed once again within the bounds of the magical canvas. Chapter 4. The next hall greeted her with a solemn and hushed silence. There were no paintings here, no stained glass, only half-shadows and austere symmetry. On either side of the marble walkway stood pedestals, each bearing suits of armor, complete, gleaming bronze, adorned with crests and visors from long-forgotten orders. They were silent, like watchful idols, forever bound in brilliance and grandeur. But Mira knew well, nothing in the Louvre was ever merely an exhibit. She moved cautiously, claws retracted, breath steady, when suddenly one of the helmets shifted ever so slightly. A creak, muffled by centuries of dust, echoed through the quiet like the sound of a broken violin. And then it began. The knight, as if awakened from an enchanted slumber, stepped down from the pedestal, followed by another, then a third, a procession of heavy figures. Bronze rang and hummed dully at the joints, hooves and boots striking the stone in rhythm. This was no battle, it was a ritual. A dance of the hunt, an ancient spell in motion. They moved not blindly, nor with fury, they pursued as hunters do in a sacred rite, carrying out the will woven into them by magic. Mira darted between them, bending and slipping as if she herself were part of the dance. She passed between towering legs, dodging blades and fists locked in armor. One knight lunged, a wide, unwieldy movement, and at that moment, Mira barely touching his leg, deftly tripped him, using his own weight against him. With a crash loud enough to rouse the spirits on the museum's roof, the bronze giant fell, shattering an ancient slab beneath him. His hand slid sideways and, as if in one last gesture of an ancient rite, brushed against a hidden lever in the wall. A sharp click resounded, stone groaned, and a panel in a side niche slid open, revealing a narrow, dimly lit passage. A secret path. A new way. A fresh mystery. Mira glanced back at the knights, who were already rising again, but now she was a step ahead. And that step led her deeper, toward the artifact, her goal, and the yet unknown wonders of the magical Louvre. Chapter 5. Mira stepped into a new hall, and everything changed. The world ceased to obey familiar logic. The ceiling was below her feet, and the floor hovered overhead, the columns twisted and curved as if hastily sketched by the hand of a mad artist. It seemed the very architecture of the hall mocked reality, breaking it and flipping it with exquisite cruelty, like the distorted reflection in an old circus's crooked mirror. The space swirled, and with every step, certainty vanished. Where was up, where was forward, and where, in truth, was she? As if in mockery, the walls were lined with mirrors. But their reflections did not mimic Mira's movements as they should. Instead, they began to live their own lives. Each mirror held the image of the cat burglar, but with a different gaze, a different gesture, a different shadow lurking in the eyes. One smiled like a predator, another tensed its claws, a third stepped forward, slowly, with ill intent. Then suddenly, one reflection broke free from the smooth surface and stepped out as if the mirror were not a boundary but a doorway. It leapt, and now Mira's double, her dark twin, stood beside her, alive, threatening, and eager to take her place. They clashed in a lightning-fast struggle, claw against claw, gaze against gaze, movements mirrored yet flawed. But Mira knew this was not a fight to win by force. It was a trap of illusion, and the way out lay deep within the mind. She pulled from beneath her cloak a flat mirror edged with runes, an ancient artifact capable of reflecting not only light but essence itself. Pressing it to her heart, she turned its reflective face toward the double, which howled and reached desperately for the source of light like a moth drawn to flame. The mirror flared with a soft silver glow, and one by one, the reflections vanished, sucked back behind their glass boundaries. The hall trembled. The walls blurred, distortions faded, the ceiling returned to its rightful place, and the floor solidified once more. The illusion, having lost its power, dissipated like a bad dream at dawn. And right before Mira, in the far corner of the hall, a new passageway opened. It had been hidden behind a wall that was now perfectly ordinary, but beyond it began the next chapter of this strange journey, and step by step, Mira drew ever closer to her goal. Chapter 6. Passing through the fading ripple of illusions, Mira found herself in a hall where silence was something special, heavy, saturated with ancient enchantments and echoes of power. This was the vault, the treasure chamber of the magical Louvre, a place where no mortal foot had ever trod. Here, there were no paintings or statuettes, only legends lived. The walls were smooth, as if carved from a single stone, softly glowing from within. The light had no source, it simply existed, like the breath of magic itself. At the very center of the hall, inside a translucent display case surrounded by a slender ring of engraved runes, hovered the shard of insight, a tiny fragment of a crystalline eye, enclosed within a slowly spinning field of light. It did not merely float in the air, it pulsed like a heart, and with each of its shimmering beats, thoughts seemed to sharpen, and truth drew nearer. But the crystal was treacherous. To gaze upon it was to risk forgetting one's purpose, oneself, and who you were, are, and will be. Around it floated other artifacts, each on its own pedestal, each cocooned in a protective spell. There was the staff of lightning, cracked and veined with slow-moving blue arcs of energy, the mask of sleep, carved from white bone, its empty eye sockets radiating forgetfulness, and nearby, the ring of silence, dim, nearly invisible, absorbing all sounds around it. Mira glided cautiously between them, as if walking through a temple of living gods. Reaching the display, she slowly removed the glove from her belt, the invisible glove, made from a fabric unseen by any spell or eye. She slipped it onto her paw, and it vanished, becoming one with the shadows. Focusing intently, Mira carefully extended her hand through the protective contour, reaching toward the hovering artifact. Her fingers nearly touched the crystal, and in that instant the entire hall shuddered. An inaudible hum swept through the air, as if the very building had awoken. The atmosphere thickened. Runes flared sharply on the floor and ceiling, new lines appeared on the walls, spiraling and twisting. The long-dormant alarm spell was now alive. The shard of insight quivered, as if sensing danger. Mira understood, time was almost gone, her touch had become the key to awakening the gods. Chapter 7. The hall trembled. The vibration came not only from the floor beneath but from the very fabric of reality itself, as if the space resisted Mira's presence, as though something ancient and powerful had finally awakened. In the center of the vault, where a mosaic of thousands of glass fragments spread across the floor, the tiles began to rise. They did not soar chaotically, instead, with eerie precision, the shards of glass assembled into shape as if gathered by an invisible hand. A hollow, distorted crackling filled the chamber as from the colorful circle emerged a figure, a glass golem, a giant forged from gleaming facets that reflected the light of magic and dread. It was both magnificent and terrifying. Its body consisted of luminous plates, each face harboring power accumulated over centuries. Inside it slowly rotated a heart, a core of pure ice, exposed like the center of a crystal. From its mouth, silently parting glass jaws, came a breath that compressed the air as if squeezing it from the world itself. Wherever its feet stepped, frost bound the floor. Runes on the ground were coated with fragile, crystalline frost. All living, moving things froze. The Louvre became an icy tomb. Without wasting a second, Mira slipped aside, her paws making no sound, though the ice beneath her feet made every step treacherous. She darted behind the nearest column, striving to soften her breath, to be but a drop of shadow. Her heart pounded in her throat. She knew this guardian was not alive, did not think, yet sensed magic like a hunter senses blood. Ordinary concealments would not save her. Yet she had one last trump, the ring of camouflage, an enchanted talisman capable of blurring her presence even in the eyes of arcane sentinels. With a single motion, she tossed the ring under her paws. A swirl of ether enveloped her for a moment, spreading through the air like a thin, nearly imperceptible veil. Mira vanished. Almost. But magic, like scent, leaves a trace, and for the golem, that was enough. It turned toward the column. Its translucent eyes flared brighter. In one swift motion, it raised a hand composed of tiny mirrored plates and smashed it against her refuge. The column, which had held the ceiling for centuries, crumbled as if made of ash. Debris swirled into the air, scattering shards of ice. The golem waited. It knew, someone was here. Someone breathed. Someone had desecrated the sanctuary with a touch. And Mira had only seconds left before the ancient wrath crushed her amidst the shadows of this frozen temple. Chapter 8. The world shook with the heavy footsteps of the awakened guardian, each thud echoing in Mira's chest like a harbinger of the end. She darted from behind the shattered column, her shadow streaking across the ice-thin floor. Under her paws, the treacherous crackle of fragile glass warned of a plunge into the cold abyss below. Her movements were swift and desperate, like a wild beast fighting for its life, each moment a battle for another breath, another step, another chance. Behind her loomed the icy death. The massive golem, unyielding and relentless, pursued her trail, and with every thunderous stride, the air grew colder still. But Mira refused to surrender. From her bag, she drew the amulet of redirection, a tiny yet cunning artifact capable of turning an enemy's force against itself. With the precision of a dagger thrower, she hurled it squarely at the golem's chest, just as it raised its hand for a crushing blow. But the strike faltered and rebounded. The force amassed for destruction crashed back upon the giant itself. With a roar like a storm, the guardian recoiled, its chest cracked, and for a fleeting moment, balance was lost, and that was all Mira needed. Spotting one of the animated statues nearby, a marble horse that once adorned the entry hall, she didn't hesitate. With a sudden leap, she climbed onto its back, deftly grasping the stone mane. The horse, awakened by the museum's ancient protective spell, stirred with alarm, but now, beneath Mira, it became her only path to salvation. With the thunderous clatter of marble hooves, shattering barriers, and a cascade of crumbling plaster like falling snow, the statue surged forward, bursting through the halls like a tempest. Display cases flew aside, columns parted, floors trembled. It was a gallop of desperate hope, a flight on the edge of the impossible, where past, present, and magic merged into a single pulsing thread. Mira pressed close to the stone neck and raced onward, through chaos, through ancient fury, toward the place where perhaps the boundary between freedom and salvation still held firm. Chapter 9. With the crashing of shattered display cases and the echo of marble hooves, Mira finally burst toward the coveted exit. Her heart pounded wildly, her clothes soaked with sweat and ancient dust, yet her pace never faltered. Behind her came the pounding footsteps, shouted commands, and bursts of spells. The guards pursued relentlessly, each clutching enchanted lanterns whose light sliced through the darkness, catching her silhouette like a mark for capture. The entire space around her seemed to ignite in a stormy blaze of yellow and blue, where hesitation meant imprisonment. But Mira showed no hesitation. At the edge of the wall, without a shred of doubt, she dug her fingers deep into the stone, the glove with feline claws biting into the limestone as if it were soft wood. Climbing upward with the agility of a jaguar, she overcame ledge after ledge until the voices below turned into cries of despair. The cold wind whipped across her face, yet it was the sweet breath of freedom. Reaching the ledge, she paused for a moment, listening to the night of Paris. The city lights scattered beneath her feet like ink speckled with precious jewels. Removing her mask, she let the cool air brush against her skin. A smile touched her lips, quick, triumphant, almost mischievous. And in the next instant, she leapt, light as if there were neither fear nor fatigue, across the chasm, onto the neighboring roof, where her trail was already nearly impossible to trace. Behind her, above the museum, the sky flared, an explosive, blinding alarm light tore through the darkness like thunder on a clear day. Magical signals shot into the night, piercing the sky. But it was far too late. She was gone. Only memory remained, and the question in the eyes of those left below, who was this shadow that stole a fragment of the impossible? Chapter 10. Night dissolved over Paris, swallowing the worries and fears of the past hours, and in the very heart of shadows, atop an abandoned stone tower, Mira finally found peace. Her secret lair, hidden from prying eyes, rose above the rooftops like a forgotten watchtower from an ancient fairy tale. Moonlight poured through the open arched windows, gently caressing curved bookshelves, antique instruments, and display cases filled with trophies. Here reigned the cozy magic of solitude, a place where fatigue gave way to triumph. Removing her mask and draping a soft cloak over her shoulders, Mira approached the glass case standing in the center of the room. In her palm rested the shard of insight, an artifact glowing with a soft, living light, as if a consciousness flickered within it. With reverent care, she placed it beside other rarities, each guarding its own secret, won through risk and cunning. The moment the artifact touched its stand, its light flared brighter, a thin beam pierced the glass and locked into Mira's pupils. For a moment, images unfolded before her eyes, distorted, mesmerizing, like echoes of another time or distant memory. Spaces rotated, silhouettes whispered without words, and threads of fate, like strands of golden web, converged into a single point. Her gaze froze, breath caught, only the glint on her cheek reminded that she was still here, in this room. As the vision faded, Mira stepped back, and suddenly behind her, on the door, a new symbol flared to life. A delicate map, woven from glowing paper, appeared on the wood. Trembling letters revealed the inscription, Museum of Time, next. The corners of her lips twitched into a silent smirk. Fate was throwing down a new challenge, and she already felt the thrill awakening within her again.